So this is Jer from That's Life. So this is part one on the truth behind the COVID statistics. So that's what this video is all about. Because as you know, we're getting fed all sorts of numbers and statistics and data from the media, from the government about COVID. What I want to do is put some perspective in these numbers because in many cases they're taken out of context. There's a missing facts, which I'm going to bring up. And we're going to try and put some context into this whole thing so we have a better idea of where we are and where we're going with this COVID pandemic. Now, we have to look at the definition of insanity, and it is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, and that seems to be what we're doing these days. So let's continue. Now, this is the most important slide out of the whole presentation. It's the United States death statistics for 2019. Per the CDC, in 2019, there were 2,855,000 deaths in the U.S. Out of a population of 328 million, this comes to basically one person in 115 will die each year in the U.S. This means an average of 7,800 deaths a day. So, every day, on average, 7,800 people will die in the U.S. Or one person in 115 will die each year in the U.S., and it's a total number of deaths of 2,855,000. You can see how the calculations were made. So these are the numbers that we have to accept. And they're going to be coming up over and over again. So as you can see, the death rates have been going up. They're going up every year. And this is for the death rates for 100,000 people. And if you wanted some idea of 2,855,000 yearly U.S. deaths, we take the University of Michigan Stadium and we fill it with 100,000 people. And you'd have to do that 28 and a half times to get some idea of the U.S. yearly deaths. And to get the perspective of a U.S. population of 328 million, we'll take the same Michigan Stadium seating 100,000 people, and we'd have to fill it up 3,282 times to get some idea of the U.S. population. And if you fill the stadium with 100,000 people each and every day, you do that for 9 years to get some idea of the population of the U.S. And COVID deaths represent between 2 to 3 days out of the 9 years. So it's not that significant when it's put into context. Now, you have to keep in mind that the U.S. is the third largest country in terms of population on the planet. So it's going to have big numbers, yes, because it's a big country with a big population. So the world population is 7.7 billion. So with the 1 million or so COVID deaths, it represents about one person in 7,475 people on the planet who have died of COVID as of October 4th. To get some idea of a population of 7.7 billion people for the world, same stadium, 100,000 people a day, you'd have to fill that stadium 77,000 times or do that for 211 years. So you'd have to go back to 1809 each and every day. You would need to fill a stadium with 100,000 people each and every day for 211 years to get some idea of the world's population. COVID deaths represent about 12 days out of 211 years. So again, it's not that significant when it's put into context. Now, these are your leading causes of death for 2018, because I have a complete statistic here. They're slightly higher for 2019. But heart disease is the big killer at 647,000. Then it's cancer, and then unintentional injuries, and then you have all the rest of the diseases. Let's keep in mind, today you're going to have people who have heart disease. They get COVID and they die. Unfortunately, they move into the COVID column. So these numbers may, if people get the COVID and die, they will be shifting columns to go into the COVID column, but they were all pre-existing conditions. Now, there's also a U.S. birth rate of 3.7 million per year in the U.S., so we have to keep that in mind. Now, here's the data of October 21st. So we have our deaths here. We have our total cases. So you do that, and it's a death rate of 2.64, or a survival rate of 97.36. So in short, if you test positive for COVID, your survival rate in the U.S. is rather high at 97.3%. So we have to look at that. But if we take the new daily deaths with the new tested positive, you come out with a going forward of a death rate of 1.86 or a survival rate of 98.14. So some may say, well, this is not very scientific. I can't argue with you. I'm just showing you the statistics. You do what you want with them. And if you notice worldwide, the death rate and the survival rate are about the same as the US. Now, we have to look at what's the real problem here that's with the immune system, and it's medications that weaken your immune system and fungal infections. So people who take medications, there may be side effects that can weaken their immune system and put them at risk for fungal infections. Now, there are many side effects to prescription medications, and one of the main ones is it might affect your ability to fight infections. Drug X may weaken your ability to fight infections, and you'll hear that quite a lot as side effects. Listen for the warnings the next time you hear one of their commercials. So they must mention these side effects, but there's really no other choice. You have to do them, or take them, I should say, because you have an underlying condition. But this may be a contributing factor in contracting the virus and ultimately death, because these prescription drugs may open the door to COVID and death. Now, drug abuse and alcohol abuse can weaken or suppress the immune system and can lead to a considerable damage to many systems in the body, especially the immune system. So we have to consider all these things that are weakening our immune system. Now, nearly 1 in 2 Americans takes prescription drugs. It's about 46%. So we have to take that into consideration, that there's a lot of people taking medications. Now, here are some statistics. So at least one prescription drug in the past 30 days. Now, these are for 2013 to 2016. This is now 46. 3 or more prescription drugs in the past 30 days, 24. Let's say it's 20. And 5 or more prescription drugs, it's 12 here. We'll say 10. That's 30 million people. So you can see that, there's over 150 million people who are taking some sort of prescription drugs, and in many cases more than once, twice, or even 5 times a day, as it mentions here. And the COVID mortality is higher in persons with underlying medical conditions, and that we know. So the causes of COVID deaths, well, pre-existing conditions, as mentioned. The virus might simply accelerate their condition and finish them off, and then they move from whatever pre-existing condition they had, they move over to COVID. The COVID column. Diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, these are all contributing factors. Drug and alcohol abuse. Certain age groups, seniors, are more at risk if their immune system is compromised. Not because they're old. It's because their immune system is compromised. I can show you an 85-year-old and a 95-year-old, and these people are doing fine. Why? Because they take care of themselves. So you have medications that interfere with the immune system, and so there's an underlying condition there, and the medications may affect their immune system. You have bad nutrition, various deficiencies, smokers, lifestyle risks. Remember, when we mention smokers, you're at risk because if you get the virus, as you know, the people who are on the ventilators, they can't breathe. What happens is the virus attacks the lungs and fills it with fluid, and you need a ventilator to be able to breathe. So you want to make sure that your lungs are in good as shape as possible. And then you have bad luck. The person was simply unlucky, and that's it, and their time was up. That's it. Simply chance, the will of God, whatever. There's all sorts of things that are going to cause the COVID deaths. There are always at-risk groups, and if you live on planet Earth, you are at risk of dying at any time for any reason. It could be luck of the draw. And if not in the categories mentioned, you may have a better chance of having an accident than getting or dying of COVID. Now, on average, and I say on average, the pre-sick are the ones dying of COVID, not the healthy people. Now, remember, I said dying, not getting, because there's a big survival rate here. So it's only the pre-sick that are dying of COVID. Now, I say on average because there's obviously exceptions, and you could have a person who's 30 years old, gets COVID or dies, and I can also show you people who smoked for 25 years and they're fine, and other people never smoked a day in their life, the same age, and yet they die of cancer. There's all sorts of statistics out there. I'm saying on average. Now, our bodies are our daily battlegrounds with the viruses. So they're perfect machines. If you give them the nutrition needed, they will do the work. Our bodies inside and outside are covered every day with bacteria, germs, and viruses, and a lot of this stuff is happening behind the scenes. So our bodies will develop immunity to daily onslaught of viruses and germs, etc. They have been doing this for the last millions of years without the help of doctors or vaccines. So the body has a tremendous ability to heal itself and survive, and it will. Now you can see all the organs of the immune system here. I'm not going to get into it, but we are equipped with quite a system here. Everybody has an immune system. We have to take care of it because that's what's going to keep us alive. Now, as I'm saying here, it may not be about disinfecting everything. It might be more about strengthening the immune system and things we can personally control. You know, we can personally control our health and nutrition. We can also personally control what kind of education we're going to get about the health, how to take care of ourselves, eat properly, taking personal responsibility for ourselves and our own health. This is something we can personally control. And we can personally control to get information about vitamin D and other supplements. And our mental health and our handling of stress, this is something we can personally control. And I think that this is extremely important that we start looking at the things that we can personally control to have a healthy lifestyle and not only depend on the media and vaccines. These are things that we can personally control to help ourselves and to get through this pandemic. Now, there were 56 million people who died in 2017. I'm just showing this for a certain information. So that's 153,000 deaths per day and 4,600,000 monthly deaths. Now, COVID is now the third leading cause of death in the U.S. Well, of course. In 2019, it didn't exist. Today, it's collected all sorts of people with underlying conditions and moved them over into the COVID column. So we'll see how these numbers look at the end of the year, but heart disease and cancer are still the leading causes of death in the U.S. And the perspective on 56 million global deaths a year, it's 560 full stadiums for 1.5 years. And the COVID deaths are about 11 days of the 1.5 years. So as you can see, the whole presentation was about death rates, and it's basically to get some sort of a perspective in terms of the death rates, to put them into context, and to realize that it's not really that bad when you look at it in a global picture. Death is a part of life. It always has been. And every day and each day people are going to die. As we said, about 7,800 people die roughly every day and 2.8 million every year. COVID or no COVID, people are going to die every day. So there's certain lives you just can't save. It's just part of the statistic. It's just part of what's going on. So what we want to do now is we have to look going forward, what is the best way to handle this pandemic? And it's not by freaking out about death rates, constantly pushing death rates on the media or in the media. It's actually looking at the survival rate, the people who are actually surviving, the people who are getting through this, and a lot of people are. So we have to really start focusing on the survival rates and what other strategies can we have rather than lockdowns and closures, etc., etc. As we can see, the U.S. leading causes of death, well, a lot of these people are just going to move over into the column of COVID for this year, from one column of sickness over to COVID deaths. It's all part of the death rates. So in conclusion, I hope we got some perspective on death rates, causes of potential risk, and the mental health and nutrition aspects of this, what we can personally control. But what we must do is we must stop this save lives mantra. The mission from we got to save lives. You know, every second sentence from the officials, either from the governor or the doctor, we must save lives. We're going to save lives. You can't save the lives. You can't. This is part of life. It's going to be the way it is. Dying if you, and there's not much you can do about it. It's just life. So closing businesses, lockdowns, restrictions, etc., and ruin the economy to save lives doesn't really work, because those lives are going to be lost no matter what you do. So we have to accept the reality of life and death. 325 million are fine and have rights. 99% of the population is actually fine. It's 1% that's at risk, and it's like the 99% have to be totally inconvenienced to help the 1%. We got to look at a different way of doing things. So this will bring about, hopefully, better solutions. So in part 2, I'm looking at possible alternative solutions, other information, and the probability of a magic vaccine to save humanity. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. So please hit the subscribe and the like button and share. And thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.